portions of KDKR's daily programming do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, Lead to Win, how you can be a powerful, impactful, and influential leader in any environment. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, Lead to Win. How can you be an effective leader in a very different environment that we face today? Author Carla A. Harris is my special guest today to discuss her latest book, Lead to Win, how you can be a powerful, impactful, and influential leader in any environment. Carla, welcome to Prudent Money.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, for having me.
Your list of accomplishments are way too numerous to go into, but I want to point one out, that you were named one of Fortune magazine's 50 most powerful black executives in corporate America, and I feel very blessed to be speaking with you today, Carla.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm very proud of that accomplishment as well, and it's my pleasure to speak with you.
So, Carla, I think that the best way to categorize the economy, the markets, especially employment, is that everything in our world seems to be turned upside down and out of balance, making your book on leadership, I think, very timely. Would you agree that effective, intentional leadership is more important than ever before?
Yes, sir. I do believe it is going to be the great unlock to what we've all been talking about over the last year, the great resignation, if you will, because I frankly, Bob, don't believe that it's the great resignation. I think it's the great contemplation. People have had like 2.5 years to sit home and ask questions. Do I like my job? Do I like my boss? Am I being leveraged effectively? Am I getting paid what I should get paid? Am I in my best and highest use? And I think the thing that will create real retention in every organization is going to be leadership. It's going to have to be intentional and one-on-one.
Well, given the backdrop of today's time and culture, let's talk a little bit. What does leadership even really mean? Yes, it means to motivate and inspire people to deliver on an objective, whatever that objective might be. And it's not about oversight anymore. I think leadership is about insight. It's about creating the vision, but leaving room for people to be able to innovate and to execute on their own. That's how you, create other leaders, but that's how you also unlock ideas or processes that you may not have thought about as a leader. You're not limiting the outcome, the process, the journey to that which you know. And because innovation is the dominant competitive parameter now across all industries, you have to be intentional around creating environments where innovation happens. One thing I wanted to point out about the book, I think that people assume that when you speak of leadership, you're automatically thinking of corporate America or a big level, high level job, when we really do have leadership responsibilities in all walks of life, making this book something that's applicable to just about anybody. You're absolutely right, Bob. I do believe that you can lead from any seat. So don't be fooled by the title that somebody has, a C in front of their title. You can lead when you're 2 weeks into a new role, when you're just starting out in your career. A lot of it is around your behavior. And here's the other thing. You'd be surprised how many people are watching you do what you do and how you do it that may take cues from you. So don't assume that because you're, new boy, new girl on the block, that you don't have the opportunity to lead. And this book is not just for corporate America. It's not just for nonprofit leaders. It is also for people who are just starting out in their own business. Because just because you're an early stage entrepreneur, you can be 40 or 50, but at your early stage in building your company, you too now are going from being a founder to being a CEO and being a leader. And those things are different. Just think that the leaders who've learned through so many mistakes through so many years, and you're just starting out with a clean slate, read the book, get the pearls of wisdom that you talk about in the book, and have a fresh start. That's right. Or even if you have been leading and you're now leading in a different context.
Yes.
Right. I know people who are sitting in the leadership seat, Bob, who grew up, as a boomer like me, and they were building their careers in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. Well, they're in a leadership seat now. But here's the deal. Most people lead the way they were led. And in that context of building your career in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, that was a my way or the highway type leadership context. You remember the joke, your boss says jump, your answer better be how high. But now if you say jump to a millennial, they're going to say why, right? And most people are not used to being challenged if they're sitting in that leadership seat. So you are not going to be effective at leading this new dominant population in the workforce, millennials and Zers, if you're operating under the old leadership construct, which is the principal reason why I wrote the book.
Yeah, you bring up the my way or the highway. A very tough situation to be on a management team that has to work with a leader with this type of mentality, we'll say. As a team member, what do you do in that situation? Obviously, you can see it every day, and you just think, well, I wish that he or she would change the way they do things. It just is what it is. What do you do?
Yes, you can offer the following. You can say, and I'll call him Bob just because I'm speaking to you, right?
Sure.
But you say, hey, Bob, I absolutely will execute exactly what you said, but I just want to offer you a thought about how we might do it more efficiently or how we might do it, in a more impactful way. I just thought I would bring this up. I'm happy to execute, but I want to bring this up. Now, again, Bob may not be willing to take it at that point. He may just say, well, just do what I told you to do, and that's fine. That's what you've signed up for. You'll execute. But there are two things that are going to happen over time. Either you will get tired of offering, potentially high impactful ideas that are not being heard, and nobody likes to find themselves in a situation where they have no voice and they're not being heard. And employees today feel a lot more comfortable at exercising their rights with their feet, and they walk, which is part of the reason why you're having the, quote, great resignation, because people are not in a place in their head now where they're willing to tolerate not being heard. So either that will happen and you will leave, or your productivity will suffer, and so will the group, and so will the organization. But that will ultimately accrue to Bob, and he's not going to be as effective as he could be as a leader because the group is not being innovative. They're not being competitive because new ideas are not allowed to bubble to the top. So either way is going to be a detriment to the organization.
Now, I know you've seen this situation probably many times, and if you're dealing with a leader that is really wrapped up in their ego, I mean, just really wrapped up in their ego, as that leader looking through your book, how do they take a look at themselves and evaluate and say, maybe I should be doing things different?
I have to tell you, Bob, I have a lot of examples in the book. I tell a lot of stories in the book. So if you are following in, if that is your blind spot and you are falling into that trap, I think you'll see yourself there, and it will hopefully give you a pause and an aha moment. And I never call out anything without giving a prescription of how to handle it. So, yeah, you might find yourself there, but I'll then say, here's what you should do. Here's how you should have handled that. Here's what you ought to say. So I speak and I write in a very prescriptive manner. So I don't leave you hanging. I don't just call out the ill without giving you the prescription.
Well, first, let's talk about this one, your lead-off pearl of intentional leadership qualities. You say leadership is a journey from execution to empowerment. Talk a little bit about what you mean with that.
Yes. Most of us get to the leadership seat because we're great at doing something. And if you grew up in a producer culture like me, like financial services, you get to leadership seats because you're the M&A banker with the greatest revenue by his or her name, or the biggest capital markets banker, or if you're in the legal profession, the lawyer with the most billable hours, or if you're in the salesperson, the person who's consistently blowing through their sales goals, then you get rewarded not only with outsized compensation, but also with promotions and titles of leadership and authority. Well, if you get to that place, the organization is no longer looking to you for just execution. They're looking to you to be a queen maker, a king maker, to teach other people how to do that, because that's how the organization will multiply its success. Because if you're a great rainmaker and now you make 4 other great rainmakers, guess what happens to the revenues, the profitability, the market share? That's really what they're looking for from you. So you should be consumed with how do you give those skills that allowed you to cut your leadership teeth and those experiences to other people. And you have to be intentional about it, because most organizations aren't equitable enough for it to happen on its own. So you have to be intentional about making sure that you're giving those things to other people to grow those leaders. That's what I mean from execution to empowerment, empowering other people to grow and become leaders.
You know, Carla, when I think of a journey, I think of a day by day, one step at a time process where you don't get too ahead of yourself and you stay present in the moment. You know, how critical is it to stay in that present moment versus the temptation to, constantly focus on what is in front of you?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I do believe in looking ahead, Bob, but I do believe also in having an agenda around everything that you do. And the agenda informs why you are doing what you're doing. So when you are in a particular role, you should be asking yourself about the questions about the seat. Why am I in this seat, i.e. this job? What do I want to learn? What skills do I want to acquire? What kind of people do I want to meet? What kind of relationships and network do I want to grow from this seat? So that you will be clear and know when it's time to change that seat. The other part of the agenda is where you are prosecuting the seat. That's called the house. Why am I in this organization? What did I like about the people? Do I have a voice in this organization? Do I see opportunities for growth? Do I have a sponsor, or do I have candidates that I could recruit a sponsor in my career? Those are all the reasons that you go to a house. And if you know why you are doing what you are doing, then it becomes really easy for you to identify when it's time for you either to leave the seat or when it's time to leave the house. But when you get to that point of leadership, you have to add a third dimension, and that is around vision. Where are we going? What could happen along the way? What are the things that could accelerate the journey? What are the things that could impede the journey? Because it's your job as you are leading other people to be able to anticipate these kinds of things. That's why I say it's a journey from oversight to insight. That is the evolution of leadership that we have seen over the last few years.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. Talking to Carla A. Harris about a great book that she's written called Lead to Win, How to Be a Powerful, Impactful, Influential Leader in Any Environment. And Carla, I want to give out your web address, carlaspearls.com. Did I get that right?
Carla's Pearls, yes. That's right, www.carlaspearls.com. And I also have a YouTube channel, Carla A. Harris.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Didn't know that. Let's talk a little bit about one of your qualities that you talk about in the book. How people feel about you as a leader will impact how they perform and what they will deliver. I mean, that's a bold statement, and says as a leader that you own your results. There are a lot of ways to create that confidence and show leadership. When you think about this quality, what is the most important action a leader can take?
Yes, it's to put yourself in a position where you can be respected by your people. Everyone may not like you, but if they know that you have the best interests of the group at heart, that you are willing to back up your people, that you're willing to support your people, invest in their development, even if for some reason you don't like me, you will respect that is my job as a leader, and I'm intent on executing that. And that makes all the difference in whether you get the 100% or the 150%, Bob. And the other thing that I say in the book very clearly is remember that when you are standing in front of anybody, especially as a leader, people are consuming you. So what do you want them to consume? And if you keep that front and center, that I think will help you to curb and to legislate, if you will, your behavior. If you think that somebody is consuming me, what do I want them to get?
One of the things that
you can control that.
One of the things I love about the book, Carla, is that anybody can flip through the book and pick up something that's just so invaluable, and you can start implementing that today. and then you can start to implement
Thank
another
you.
principle, another piece of wisdom per day, and really make a big difference. Let's talk a little bit about the team that you put together. A leader is only as successful as the team that surrounds that leader. What qualities do
That's
you look
right.
for when developing that team?
Yes. The first of all, you want someone who is interested in learning, has aspirations to grow. When you're thinking about the qualities of the person, obviously you might be looking for some kind of functional expertise. But I always say that whenever you're interviewing, the interviewer is looking for your can-do, your will-do, and your fit. Your can-do is all about, do you have the aptitude to perform the job? The will-do is about your attitude, your spirit, your curiosity, your bent towards innovation, you're bent towards going beyond that which is obvious. And then the fit is, do you fit in well with that culture? Do you play well when in the sandbox with others? Are you, a servant leader in the making, or a servant leader already, where you're thinking about first, how can I serve you versus how can I, get over on you, or, execute this particular transaction. So there's qualities like that I think as a leader you're looking for when you're trying to choose your team. But I always say to leaders, make sure you are intentional when you are building a team about hiring for the gaps, because when you are in a fast-paced, high-growth, intense, competitive environment, your temptation is always to go get another you, especially if you're operating at that high level and you're an executor and you're saying, I just need another me. If I could have 3 more me's that are willing to hustle as hard as I'm hustling and work, then I'll be good. But you got to go against that temptation. You have to now stop and ask yourself as a leader, what is my best and highest use? Especially if you're building a company. Am I the chief salesperson? Nobody can tell the company story better than me. Or nobody can keep the trains running better than I can. Or nobody can go out and raise money or get customers better than I can. Well, that is what I'm going to go to bed and wake up every morning, focused on doing. So that means I now need to get a miss inside, somebody who can keep the trains running. Not that I can't do it, but that's not my best and highest use. Oh, I need to get a good finance person that can make sure that the books are presentable and compelling to a prospective investor. I can't do it, but that's not my best and highest use. So as an early stage entrepreneur, you have to be focused when you're building your chief sales officer, chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, that you go first for the gaps, not for somebody who's like you. And then after you get that initial 5 or 6 people who is your core team, then you start trying to build upon the culture. And if you're going to hire somebody that's going to be your chief talent acquisition person, then trust them to do the job. I once knew a CEO who has built an amazing company, fast growth company, but he was holding on for dear life as he built his culture because he didn't want the culture to be interrupted. So he felt that he had to interview every single person. Well, 1,000 people into it, you're kind of hurting yourself if you have to see every single resume when you've hired an amazing HR person. You got to empower them to do what you hired them to do, and trust them with the culture. You infect that first 6 or 8 people and let them go and infect further as your company grows.
You know what, Carla, you write about taking risks. I mean, it's a high-stakes game. It's also high risk and reward. A lot comes along with taking risks. Decision-making process, so very important. And sometimes I think we have the tendency to sit on a decision and kind of mitigate as much of the risk away as possible until you get it down to, okay, well, I can make the decision now when you probably should have made it 4 or 5 weeks ago. How do you know if you're if you're making that taking that right risk, making that right decision?
Yes, that's a great question, Bob, and you have to develop a discipline for moving a little bit faster. There's nobody that's in a leadership position that would not like to have complete certainty around a decision that they're making. But you have to get yourself comfortable quickly, especially if you're catapulted into that leadership seat, that you will never have all of the information. So you have to have that conversation with yourself to say what is the absolute essential information that I need to have, and then I'm going to go forward. How do I assess the risk? And more importantly, how do I articulate the potential risks as I am now going to deploy a decision-making process, I'm going to have 5 pieces of data instead of 8 pieces of data, and I'm going to move forward, and here's why. Well, that you have to be able to talk to your stakeholders about why your decision-making process is the way it is and get everybody comfortable with it. And then you move forward. But you have to develop that discipline and that practice of continuing to do that so that you feel more and more comfortable that your gut or the data that you acquire is the right data. But you got to move forward with that in developing that. And you won't know until you do it whether or not you can get a high degree of comfort with 2 pieces of data, 5 pieces of data, or whether you just can't do it with 10. But here is where I caution you. If you need to wait until you have almost complete information, then you're going to run the risk of running behind the competition and not being as innovative as you could be because you're spinning your wheels waiting for the information when you could be iterating. And innovation is born from iteration.
You've already mentioned a couple of my favorite concepts. The first one being servant leadership. I just love that concept. And then the about being intentional. What does intentional leadership look like?
Intentional leadership is showing up every day, and I talk about the pearls of intentional leadership, meaning that, before you get out of the car and you step into whatever organization, or before you get on that Zoom as you are stepping into your leadership role, then you are intentional around your authenticity, around building trust, around creating clarity, creating other leaders, diversity, innovation, inclusivity, and voice. That you're thinking about those things. And here's the deal, Bob, it doesn't take that long. It's a few minutes of prep where you say, okay, it's Monday. Here are the things, here's my vision for the week of what I hope we get done. Here's how I'm thinking about my people. Are they going to have an opportunity to learn? Am I exposing them to the right things? Am I leaving enough space for them to contribute and to innovate in what it is we have to do? How do I make sure that I include the attaboys and the attagirls? How do I make sure that I'm soliciting people's voices? Don't give the answer, give the question, ask them to participate. You got to think about that, because when you are in a fast-paced environment, and I keep going back to fast-paced environments because that's what I grew up with on Wall Street for 35 years, it is so easy to get distracted by the execution and not the intentionality of how you need to show up and how you're being consumed.
I can't end this interview without talking about probably my favorite of your top 10 and applicable in so many situations. Talk about the strength of insight. You say that strong insight will lead you to focus on and execute what will be instead of what is. Talk about what you mean about that.
Yes, because it's so easy, as I just said, to focus on the what is. And if you're really busy and it's intense, you are completely distracted by that. But as a leader, you have to force yourself to lift up and say, why is this happening? Why does this client want it to happen this way? What else is in the context? What am I missing here? How am I giving my people an opportunity? Am I giving my people an opportunity to show their best selves? Am I pushing them? Am I creating risks for them to take so they develop that risk-taking muscle? All of that is around insight. Oversight, which is, I would say, leadership was consumed with that over the last 30 or 40 years, was making sure that people were executing on that which you told them to execute on. But innovation now, as I said before, Bob, is the dominant competitive parameter, which means you are constantly going into territories unknown, figuring out when you get a new product now saying, wow, this is great. We can make $1 billion off of that, but what's 2.0? Because if you're not thinking about 2.0, 3.0, when you introduce your 1.0, somebody's already thinking about how to disintermediate you.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening.
That's what I'm talking about.
Go ahead.
Insight.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I talked right all over you, Carla.
That's what I'm talking about, insight.
Carla's...
All righty. Sorry, Bob, I'm done.
That's perfectly all right. Carla's book is Lead to Win, How to Be a Powerful, Impactful, Influential Leader in Any Environment. I call this one of those must-read books. Great information, and congratulations, Carla, on your program. It's been a blessing to talk to you.
Thank you, Bob, and it's been my blessing. Thanks for having me.
Once again, the name of that book is Lead to Win, How to Be a Powerful, Impactful, Influential Leader in Any Environment. You can get to more information at carlaspearls.com. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and if you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by K. Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Listen daily, 3:30 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Hi, this is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. You know, marriage and money can be a